Hey gang, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys checking today's video out, stopping by. And guys, we have a really interesting video for you all today. We are going to be talking about and making the case on why our lakes are tougher now than they've ever been, why there's fewer fish in our lakes than there's ever been, and how the bass are evolving not to bite certain lures. And I'm going to we're going to step back. I'm going to go back in time 50 years ago and talk about some of my 50-year-old lures here and sort of give you guys a clue on how these 50-year-old lures can make the point that I'm making about we don't have very many bass in our lakes anymore, and the bass are evolving at a very rapid rate to make it more difficult to catch them. So anyway, guys, before we get started, I want to remind you about our November sale on my Silverback Signature Series RB3 series sunglasses. These are the new models that just came out last month with the crystallized matte gray lenses to reduce the light reflection. And if you buy a pair this month, you get buy a pair, you get another pair free. So 2 for the price of 1 on my Signature Series glasses, guys. You can't beat that, man. I'll put the Silverback link in the description. You guys can check those out. Much appreciated. Okay guys, here's what we're going to talk about here. I'm going to show y'all 4 of the lures that I used to use all the time back in the late 70s at Table Rock Lake and Grand Lake and Stockton Lake here in Missouri. And then we're going to do a correlation on now versus then as far as the productivity. Talk a little bit about the evolution of bass. Now, first of all, let's get into the baits here, then I'm going to make the point. Here are the 4 baits that I used to fish all the time back in the 70s, you know, with my dad, you know, growing up. And we used to catch tons of big ones, guys. I'm talking about we would go out with these baits here. If you were out during a prime season of the year, like in the springtime of year at Table Rock or Grand, if we didn't catch a 7 to 9 pounder on one of these baits, it was an exception to the rule. Now, 5 pounds, maybe 6 pounds wins most big bass awards throughout any tournament throughout the year. Plus, you just don't catch the numbers or the overall size. But the 4 baits were the old Hellbender here, guys. This used to be probably the best big bass bait back in the 70s. I saw my dad catch a bunch of big ones on these at Table Rock Lake and at Grand, the Hellbender. And then the old Jitterbug, which was really, really good down at Grand Lake in the 70s. Throwing this thing around, you know, just any type of willow trees or something in the water, just the old Jitterbug. Catch a lot of big ones there. Same with the Hula Popper. Hula Popper, you know, probably the best big bass bait next to the Jitterbug out there back in the 70s. Table Rock Lake, Stockton, Grand. You take this thing up there, catch big ones all the time on it. And finally, this little scooper, this Rebel little scooper crankbait here. This was sort of ahead of its time, but back in the 70s, this was probably the best crankbait. Caught a lot of big ones on that too, especially down at Grand Lake. Okay, now let's fast forward, guys. Let me give you an example. When my dad and I used to go down to Table Rock Lake, like in March or something like that, and we'd throw these Hellbenders like that, you know, you'd catch 20-pound bags every time you went out, and usually you'd catch some big ones on it, almost every single time. Here's the point of what I'm talking about, guys, why there's fewer bass than ever in any of these lakes out there and why they're more educated. I can promise you guys, if you took this bait right here down to Table Rock Lake and threw it in the same places that we used to catch hogs in back in 1975, I bet you could fish this thing for a week and never get a bite on Table Rock Lake. You take this thing out to Table Rock Lake the same way a Jitterbug. You might catch a few early in the morning or something like that, but you're not going to catch many on it. Same with the Hula Popper. I mean, they're a topwater lure. Fish is going to hit them, but if you try to take these down to Grand Lake or Table Rock, if you catch anything on it, you know, it's going to be an exception to the rule. And pretty basic crankbait like this too. There's a lot of more modern crankbaits that would outproduce the Rebel model here. But back then, again, we caught a lot of big ones on it. So, 2 things to consider here. There's 2 points I want to make in this video. Number 1 is, why is it that in 1975 you could go down to Table Rock Lake or Stockton or Grand Lake and catch a bunch of fish on a Hellbender here, and now why can't you do it at Table Rock Lake? Why can't you even get a bite on this thing that was so productive 50 years ago? Now, you can say, well, the bass are educated to it. No, because they never see this. How many bass do you think have seen a hillbender or a jitterbug on Table Rock Lake lately? These fish, there's been generations of fish that have never seen this bait. So, you know, in theory, since there's been generations of bass that have never seen this lure whatsoever, why aren't they just biting it like crazy if I go down there and try it? You know, they ought to bite it since they've never seen it, and they used to bite it 50 years ago. I should go down there and catch giants on it, but you can't get a dang bite on it. The reason that you can't get a bite on it, in my opinion, is twofold. Number one, there are not near the bass in the lakes that there used to be 50 years ago. And you can't, people say, oh, Randy, that's a bunch of crap. There's this, like, the conservation department says it's full of fish and there's too many fish and it takes all these weights to win tournaments. Guys, that you cannot go by that, because the only thing that you can go by in a tournament weight setting, if you want to talk about weights, is what the bottom 25% of the anglers catch. The top 25% is not a accurate reflection of the average bass angler as far as the success that they have there. And the thing about that, think of the bass that if you can catch a 25-pound bag of fish at Table Rock Lake 50 years ago on this, think if you took a Megabass jerkbait or an A-rig or a glide bait down there 50 years ago, which you could have caught. The point is there's simply not as many fish. That's one of the reasons you don't catch as many fish on these type of lures, is there's simply not the bass there to be caught them on it. Number two is, I believe that bass evolve constantly and very quickly. I mean, the largemouth bass have been here in some form of the species for over 3 million years on this planet. The Micropodus salmonoid lineage, which is the bass. And of course, they probably evolved over those millions of years to the state that they're at. But the point of what I'm talking about here is, for a species to have survived 3 million years on this planet, they have to evolve and adapt very quickly to a changing environment. And I think that's what they do. I think on some deeper DNA level, on the evolutionary scale, the bass simply evolve to learn not to bite certain lures over a course of time. And obviously, like with this example I'm giving you guys right here, they learn extremely quick not to bite certain lures. So why is it, okay, tell me this, why is it Table Rock Lake, like I said, I use Table Rock as an example because this is where I saw it firsthand myself. Why is it in 1975 I could take this jitterbug, which is over 50 years old, down to Table Rock Lake and catch a 25-pound bag almost any time I went down there? And then now, you know, if you threw a whopper plopper or some high-tech lure, you wouldn't even catch that much on it, let alone on a jitterbug. Same with like the hellbender. You know, why is it, you know, you go down to Table Rock Lake now and catch a 12 or 13 bag on a wigglewort or some, you know, more of a modern high-tech, you know, super cool looking crankbait, and then, you know, you can't even get a bite on the hellbender out there. So point is like, I think that we sort of need to reevaluate a little bit about what's happening to our lakes from a sustainability factor, because that's another reason, guys, I'm always harping on the live scope deals, is I just think it threatens the sustainability of our fisheries the same way that tournaments do and overfishing. I mean, tournaments have a tremendous negative effect on our fisheries as far as killing fish and educating fish not to bite certain lures. So we've got a lot of challenges in the sport. I think one of the biggest sort of dilemmas that we have in bass fishing is that people talk about getting more people into the sport and growing the sport, getting young people in the sport. I think at some point you can love a sport like bass fishing to death. Bass fishing is not like, you know, a baseball game or something like that. It is you're dealing with an animate object, with a live object that changes constantly, and it's not like a traditional sport out there. And I think that if we have too much pressure on the fish, if we have too many people fishing for them, it's going to negatively affect the fisheries in the future. And it's very difficult, because what do you do? I mean, you just tell people they can't fish? No, obviously that's not the answer. In my opinion, the answer is building more lakes. I mean, ponds are such a great idea. There's so many places across the country that the land is set up perfect to dig ponds. And ponds provide incredible wildlife habitat for a diversity of species of plants and animals and fish. They're just we need more water. We need more ponds. We need more lakes. There's one thing about people from an environmental standpoint. They say, well, I can't believe you want to dam up this creek or river to make a lake out of it. And I get that part of it, but in the bigger picture, once you do create a lake, you've created an ecosystem that basically can sustain more wildlife than the river could. A lake, the diversity of habitat that a lake offers, and especially if you don't have a lot of development around the lake, it can support more wildlife than just the standard, riverine, type of situation before a lake was built. So anyway, like I said, I always find this is one of the things I go back to. I just remember so many of those days down there at Grand Lake and Table Rock catching big ones on these hellbenders, and they won't bite them anymore like that. That's my theory on why that happens out there. And be curious to get your guys too. Please drop a comment, hit that like button, and let me know what you guys think. So we'll talk later.